So, good morning, Ram, and good morning, everyone. I'm talking to Graham, who is my old friend from Germany. We did a similar fellowship together in Germany, and Graham works in mobility and transport, and he's a United States citizen, but currently stationed in Canada, in Vancouver. So, Graham, thank you for your time, and uh, tell me something and tell everybody that what exactly is happening and what is your view about the current situation as being experiencing from both sides of the border?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Gaurav, and great to see you again. Always nice to catch up with you. Yeah, so I moved to Vancouver, Canada, which is on the west coast of Canada, about 10 months ago now, to work for the Regional Transportation Authority. I work on policy and strategy for new mobility modes, which is cleaner, more efficient vehicles, and micro mobility, so dockless electric bicycles, scooters, mopeds, smaller devices to move people more efficiently. Um, as you know, in the past few months, really, COVID virus has expanded dramatically throughout the world. And it's probably hit the worst back home where I'm originally from in New York City. They have the most cases in the United States at the moment. Um, I think the US has the most cases globally at this point,
Yes, yes, you're right. Yeah.
um, which is really scary. And some governments have responded really well to this, like in South Korea, for example, with really increasing testing and tracking of contacts, contact tracing, using apps for communication of information, um, and doing the stay-at-home mandate, as you have in India now, probably the biggest stay-at-home mandate, biggest
So in the
population
world.
in the world. But here in Vancouver, Canada is doing okay. I think there's like 28,000 confirmed cases in the whole nation. And in BC, it's pretty low. It's something like 1,500. Um, Canada's pretty spread out. There's more kind of land per population. But also I think the government's done a pretty good job of responding. Locally, they're closing streets to cars to create more space for people to walk, to still get fresh air, but stay 2 meters apart. And only essential businesses are open. If you go to the grocery store, you wait in lines 2 meters apart, and they even spray your hands with hand sanitizer before you go in. So a number of measures that I think are keeping the curve lower.
Yeah. Thank you for those details. What do you think is there is always this? I mean, I'm asking you like a citizenship, a citizen who's lived most his life in New York. Why did it really become so bad? I mean, your own impression, emotionally or psychologically, what do you think? What really went wrong in your anticipation? Because
Yeah.
it's horrifying to look at those numbers every day.
Yeah, it is really scary, and the increase was like exponential. I think it's a few things. It's density of population, so there's just more opportunities for contact, but it's also the leadership. I won't take this opportunity to bash U.S. politics, as we all have our perceptions of that, of course, but the information was provided several months ago, and no one really took action on that information quickly enough. As you probably saw in the media, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, quoted that they needed, I think, like 40,000 ventilators for hospitals for respiratory issues related to the virus. And the federal government provided, I think, a tenth of that, like 4,000,
Oh, yeah.
which is pretty offensive. So it's probably a similar situation to where you are, where, there's a lot of people in a really dense urban environment, and what can you do? You have to tell them to stay home. You have to sanitize the urban centers and the transport. But there's more measures. You need to track people. You need to use technology to communicate information. And you need to take care of the most vulnerable populations as well, I think.
Yeah. And what about from a mobility perspective? I mean, I hear that there are still mobility issues. I mean, there are still domestic flights in America if they are still going on. I think in some places, which is detrimental to the effect to the, to the effects, I mean, efforts that you make against the virus. So, because in India, we have a total lockdown, that means even if I have to buy grocery, I have to go to my local grocery store. I can't just take up my car and go to a big shopping mall. And if I'm going, then there is entry and exit, and my numbers are noted how many times I went out of the house with my car to which place, and somebody will take a note of it. And if police investigates, I mean, they're trying to limit it. They can't really keep a curfew and arrest you and everything, but it's like a general conscience. So my idea to you asking is, how is mobility one of the factors in leading it to, to a developed economy like USA?
Yeah, that's a great question also. So all of these things, related to the economy are kind of interrelated. And a colleague of mine described it as a sort of house of cards, where if one collapses, they will all be impacted. And transportation is certainly an essential service. It's what gets people to work and to school. As there's now the stay-at-home mandate, travel has reduced by, I think, more than 80% in BC anyway. So the revenues are really down. The Transportation Authority is losing like 75 million a month or something in revenue. So they'll require a bailout from the provincial or federal governments to sustain themselves. But in terms of just daily service for the essential workers to get to hospitals or to the grocery stores where they work, they've implemented a few measures. So one is on the buses, only the rear doors open on the bus to protect the drivers. So the passengers, if they have the virus, are a bit further away from the driver. Other things are the fares have been eliminated, so the bus is free now. And they've been sanitizing and also separating seats. So it's actually every other or 2 or 3 seats that you can only sit down. But this does impact if you have crowding. But it's interesting because in my field, shared mobility was always more efficient, right? It's moved most people, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and now it's like, don't share anything.
Don't share anything. Yes.
Yeah, don't touch anything, like stay apart. So it's really tricky, but we're doing our best. And
yeah, so I mean, it's a short conversation that I want to have with you. The last 2 questions. First is based on, you touched it rightly, about shared mobility. And the question is based on Uber and, the shared services providers. They are the most hit in terms of, because they are anyone and everybody. And the second question linked to it is, when do you think, because we are looking at prospects where transportation is the last sector to be opened entirely, because that's where the whole communication and communicable, aspect of the disease is more relevant. So what are your takes on these 2 things?
yeah, I think in terms of like Uber or Lyft or these kind of startup ride-hailing companies, their financial models will be really impacted just because travel is down so much, and they're private companies, so they rely entirely on their revenue from their business models. They had already been hurting quite a bit even before the virus because they're sort of artificially lowering prices to compete with each other and other modes of transit. So who knows? We may see some of these startups that have been around for quite a while now not be able to recover. That is a possibility. Another thing just to note regarding transportation is, particularly like in India, in New Delhi, you've seen blue skies, I think, for one of the first times in quite a while, that air pollution is down significantly. Yeah. So as we're flattening the curve for COVID, we're also flattening the climate change curve substantially by just traveling less. And then your second question was related to, sorry?
Yeah, the last sector that will be opened would actually be transportation. I mean, any which ways, personal transportation, if you have your own car, can be made to go to places, but interstate or intra-country or inter-country travels would be the last to open up, just to keep it as low as possible. That's where the sector-wise transportation will be the last one in anybody's mind to revive the economy.
Yes, and we're seeing, so like the airlines or regional trains, these will also be really significantly impacted. I think you're right. it's going to be so tricky to kickstart the economy again and to sustain these businesses. Um, some proposals have been, reallocating tax structures, so looking at a millionaire's tax or a billionaire's tax. You have potential presidential candidate Bernie Sanders in the United States talks quite a bit about these socioeconomic equity issues. How
Yes.
do we redistribute wealth away from private corporations, but to the public benefit? And I think transportation, as well as healthcare, which we're now seeing that's really come to light. Americans in particular, you need social health care. If you lose your job, you lose access to services, you lose all your wealth just to get treatment. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a really complex situation to recover from. It's all
Potentially.
connected.
Yes, yes, yes. It's all connected. Yes, it's like a transdisciplinary research platform which has no particular right answer to resolve anything. But yes, but what do you want to say to people as in coming from transportation and mobility? What do you want to suggest to people as a as a professional in your field? What do you like to tell people in this, because in this crisis
Yeah.
times?
I think in the crisis times, in terms of transportation, what I would advise is don't travel unless it's completely necessary. If you can work from home, it's certainly a privilege, but take advantage of it. Use technology to work remotely. I think that will see a dramatic increase even after this blows over. Also, walk, use a bicycle. The healthiest ways to travel, the cheapest ways to travel, the less greenhouse gas emitting ways of travel. And longer distances, if you need to drive, or you need to take public transit, do it, but, wash your hands and wear a mask and social distance, physical distance, as we've been being told. So.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for your time, Graham. I'm delightful that we have caught up after 3 years in
Yeah.
turbulent and very difficult circumstances. But yeah, I will. I mean, it's good to talk to you, somebody firsthand. That's what I was trying to, and put all my friends together and get these sort of voices out. I don't know how much it will be good, but it is useful to talk to somebody firsthand and understand the problems being faced. So thank you so much. I wish you all the best, and enjoy Vancouver, because you have a much wider area to walk and bicycle than in India. So, yeah. Take care of
Nice
yourself.
speaking with you too, Gara. Good to see you again,
Good
and
to see you,
stay
man.
healthy.
Stay
Okay.
healthy too. Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.